What's up guys? Welcome back to Destiny Updates. Bungie released their first podcast in over 2 years, and it's pretty loaded with info. It features Deej, Urk, and Halcyon as the main crew, with Tom Doyle and Josh Hamrick as guests, both of whom have major roles in Destiny's weapons, so naturally this podcast is all about guns. I would definitely recommend watching this entire video, as it's quite loaded with bits of important and new information. Now, I'm going to do my best to break this down and make it as short and detailed as possible. We'll see how that goes. The first guest was Tom Doyle, and most of the following info comes from him. He said they want us to be able to tell what a gun will do and how it will behave before we even pull the trigger. So I think that basically means using styles and looks that are familiar enough for us to get a basic idea of what the gun does, which we've already seen in the guns they've shown. Next, he mentioned how in Halo there were good guy guns and bad guy guns. Those were the two major palettes. And he said that there will be a certain amount of that in Destiny, but overall they want to tell a much bigger, richer story. I thought that was fairly interesting, as it sounds like we might be able to use bad guy guns, as he said. Does that just mean bandits and such though? Would the Red Death be considered a bad guy gun? Or did he mean actual alien weapons? I certainly hope that's the case, but it's hard to say. Also, when he said they want to tell a richer, larger story, I would imagine that means having more than just two main palettes, like in Halo. I think we'll see a lot more variety. After that, he compared Destiny's exotic weapons to Excalibur, which I think makes sense. I mean, Destiny's exotic guns are special pieces that have been handed down, modified, and improved for likely hundreds of years. They all have a story surrounding them, and they all seem fairly difficult to earn. Then Urk said that even the standard weapons, like the Duke Mark 44 hand cannon, feel rich and historic and feel awesome to use. Continuing on, this is a pretty big one. Tom was talking about how some of the initial art they were using of the city was from down at the street level, and then he said, most of the imagery that the public's seen at this point have been up in the towers, up in Mount Olympus. So that was very, very interesting. That sounds like close to confirmation that the last city is below Mount Olympus in Greece. Previous theories set the city in Puerto Princesa in the Philippines, and they actually seemed likely. It fit quite well with what we've seen. But it seems that may not be the case. If it really is located below Mount Olympus, I think that'd be a pretty awesome setting. And then he talked about how this street level art got them thinking about gun bazaars or markets, and master gunsmiths in this city. I don't know for sure, this is me filling in the gaps trying to piece together what he said, but I definitely get the feeling that we'll see smaller gun manufacturers or master smiths in the city as opposed to one major company that makes everything. I think that would make for a lot of different styles of guns. I would compare it to swords. Every blacksmith has their own touch and way of doing things, so if that same principle could be applied to Destiny, gun models made by different smiths might have their own special looks and styles. And I think that all sounds pretty awesome. After that, they discussed procedurally, or you might say randomly generated weapons, which is like Borderlands' weapon system, where the engine will take a base model of a gun and mix and match parts to make tons of different guns. Anyways, he said that in order to make every gun feel unique and awesome, there is no procedural weapon generation in Destiny. Every single gun in the game is handcrafted. He said they do reuse parts, but they do it in such a way to still make the gun feel unique. And again, it's done by a real person instead of a computer. Now this completely invalidates a video I did many months back, where I thought procedurally generated weapons in Destiny sounded very, very likely. I think I must have taken that article a bit too literally. One thing to note is that even though it won't be procedurally generated, Destiny will still have a lot of weapons. They won't give us any numbers, but they keep making it sound like quite a large amount. Moving on, they talk about how Destiny's world basically allows them to design weapons in any way they want and still fit it into the lore. They don't have tough constraints like they did in Halo. He said that in Destiny, their imagination is really the only limit, which I think sounds great, and it allows for all these really interesting and cool designs like we've been seeing. The next bit was very interesting. He actually reveals two new weapons, the first of which is called the Last Word. It sounded like they said it has a sandalwood grip, it's gilded, has a filigree inlay, and sort of a frontier survivalist feel. It's also a hand cannon and appears to be the exact opposite of Thorn. Thorn is a dark, menacing gun, whereas the Last Word is really a hero's weapon. It sounds like quite a beautiful gun, something I definitely want to go for. I can't wait to see what it looks like. And then the next new gun is called the Hardlight. The only hint we have about this is he said that it's something a future tech soldier would carry. I get the feeling that it might be a fusion rifle, probably something really sci-fi and cool, but we'll just have to see. Continuing on, Urk said that they not only have a very large palette of weapons, but also a huge palette of buildings, locations, gear, and armor, which of course is awesome to hear. Next, they said that some guns can only be earned in the story campaign or co-op, and some only in competitive multiplayer, so you might see someone with a gun you really like and ask him where he got it. The idea is that it might lure people out of their comfort zones to experience more. For example, someone who mainly plays competitive multiplayer could see an awesome looking gun and find out you have to do a certain story mission to get it, so he might go do that mission that he otherwise wouldn't have done. After that, Tom said that it was important that the weapons and gear you have aren't only a sign of how long you've played, but also what activities you do. Then he said that one of the weapons they showed off at E3 is a PvP only weapon, so the only way to get it is by playing competitive multiplayer. Now of course he didn't say which gun that was, and that just makes me want it even more. And then the next rather important piece is that the competitive multiplayer, or PvP, seems to occur in the arena. This has been bouncing around quite a bit. On one hand, we've heard things making it sound like the PvP happens out in the world, and we've also heard about the arenas before, but I would say this is the most solid source at this point, so I would say it probably is a PvP arena. I would imagine it'd be in the city, although it could be somewhere else. There could potentially even be multiple arenas. Now, I've talked about the arena idea in my Dear Traveler series before. My idea was that it could be a holographic or simulation thing, and that would make it all work in the lore, but I have no idea what they might be planning. After that, an interesting little point is that they've noticed in their playtest that no one has the same gun, so that should speak to the amount and variety of weapons in Destiny. Now at this point, Tom Doyle steps out and Josh Hamrick comes in, so most of the following is from him. The first thing we learned is that Deej likes to fondle his weapons. No, that was just a joke on their part, but they did discuss how they want the player to form a relationship with their guns, in the sense that we own them and upgrade them, I believe. Moving on, another very big point is that in Destiny's current state, it's always possible this could change, we can actually carry much more than 3 weapons. It's just that those 3 are the ones readily available during combat. I'm guessing all the others you carry would be in some inventory menu or something and need to be equipped into one of your 3 slots before use. But the thing is, he said he'll be doing some things to talk you out of switching mid-combat, as they don't want you to walk into a scenario with every gun immediately available, but you will be able to easily switch them out after the engagement is over. Now what they'll do to discourage switching mid-combat, I don't know. It may have something to do with ammo, as you'll hear in a second, but whatever it is, I'm sure it'll make sense. Now after that, I believe he was talking about competitive multiplayer, and seemed to say that we can switch out any of our 3 weapons mid-game if we want. For example, you get into a game and see that a shotgun would be better suited for that map, you could swap out whatever was in your special slot and pop in your shotgun. But then he might send you running off to find ammo for it once you switch, because he'll rob you as punishment for switching. I could be wrong as it's a bit unclear, but that's what I got from it. Whether this specific scenario would only apply in competitive or also in co-op, I'm not sure. I almost get the feeling that this is competitive specific though, and I mean, if you think about it, you do need to swap out your loadout mid-game sometimes in competitive, so it would make sense in my opinion. And then continuing, he said that they'll do things to encourage you to use your primary weapon the most. Again, referring to competitive, I believe. I think that could also have to do with ammo, as it sounds like your primary may be the only gun that will have ammo automatically when you spawn. Next, another minor detail, we learned that scout rifles are semi-auto carbine style guns, not full auto assault rifles. Back to the important stuff, he talks about map control in competitive multiplayer, saying that in Halo it was all about grabbing the power weapons, that's what got you moving around the map, but in Destiny you always spawn with the weapons you own, you carry all your weapons with you in both co-op and competitive, so what they did instead is they based it off of ammo. Rather than having to get the power weapons themselves, you have to get the ammo for them. Your heavies will not spawn with any ammo. Also, when you kill an enemy player in PvP, you can grab the ammo they have, so that makes you play cautiously as you will lose it if you die. After that, another important bit, ammo is generalized to each class of weapon. There is primary ammo, special ammo, and heavy ammo. There aren't separate ammo types for each individual weapon, just that type of weapon. While this may come off as disappointing to some, it would be a nightmare if you had to get all the exact ammo types for each gun. In competitive, it wouldn't even work. So I think it makes perfect sense, really. Continuing on, in Destiny's current state, and this could definitely change, although Josh hopes it doesn't, when you grab ammo for your heavy, you have to load it into the gun, and so you can't instantly fire upon pickup. You can compare this to Halo, where when you grab the rocket launcher, you could immediately fire it off. Now that's not the case, which I think sounds like it could definitely be good. You have to be a little more cautious, and it won't be quite as much of a mad rush with a whoever gets it first wins type of outcome. I like how it sounds. But again, that's still being tested and is definitely subject to change, which actually goes for everything in this entire podcast. Destiny is still pre-alpha and all subject to change. Another somewhat more minor point is that we know primary ammo replenishes when you die. Deej was joking around saying that if he ran out, he'd just let himself be killed to get more. And then one final minor detail, they said that you can get an idea of what a player's weapon is by his or her class and by seeing its silhouette, but because people go into competitive with their own custom weapons, you never know exactly what you're up against. There's always some excitement there from that. Now that was all the most important major points from the hour-long podcast. To close it out, Urk said that they'll be back next week, and then no they won't, they'll be back whenever they get around to it. I personally thought it was quite nice to listen to, especially when it got going, and there were actually some funny parts closer to the end as well. I definitely recommend listening to the full thing if you have an hour to spare. The link is of course below. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'm really sorry for being a bit late on this. Breaking down a podcast is more difficult than other things, as it's very long and in this case loaded with info. If you liked the video, clicking that like button helps a great deal and is very much appreciated. If we could get it to over 1,000 likes, that'd be awesome. If you enjoyed, of course. If not, then don't. Anyways, that's it for this video. Thank you very much for watching as always, and I'll see you in the next update.